tell 'em alright, if the world is all we got, then alright, but it's not to what you want, just ring them with diamonds and gold, and so they fight. A voice came and spoke to the silence. The words took on beauty and form. The form took its shape as a garden was born. Then man from the dust came reflecting all goodness and beauty and life. But he lowered his gaze as he listened to the face of low desires. This my soul you were born into. What this man has done.
I want to welcome those watching via Food for Life TV this morning. We appreciate you joining with us. Trust that this next few minutes will be a blessing to you. Thank you for joining with us. Man, Pam's out of town this morning, so we won't be having any music today, but we'll get into the Word. I want to talk today about living by principles. Principles are something that, in my opinion, are greatly lacking in the societies around the world that we see today. A principle is rules, or are rules that we live by. Principles, they're rules that we live by. They govern our lives, our societies, our politics, whatever men get involved in, principles are there, whether good or bad. But the ones that we should be aware of are the ones that are decent, good, and the ones that Jesus spoke about in the Beatitudes, which were all basically principles to live by. I want to read today out of the book of Judges, the 20th chapter. There's a story here about this very thing. I want to read most of this chapter, probably all of it, for the sake of our understanding. The one before it explains part of this, but this is explanatory enough. We don't have to read the last chapter. We don't have to read 19 to get the essence of what's going on here. Then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead. And the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people, of all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard that the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" Now the people of Israel and the people of Benjamin. Benjamin was a tribe of Israel. But Benjamin, in some manner, had set themselves apart. So the people of Israel now is talking about the other 11 tribes who have gone up against the tribe of Benjamin. And this tells us the reason. And the Levite, which was a priest of Israel, He's answering them when they said, how did this evil happen? And the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, I came to Gibeah. Now Gibeah just means a hill in Hebrew, any hill. But in this particular sense, there was a city, Gibeah. And it might have sat on a hill, because a lot of times they would name a city that sat on a hill like that. And there were several of them in Israel, actually. This one was close to Benjamin. I came to Gibeah that belongs to Benjamin, I and my concubine, to spend the night, which was his wife. And the leaders of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house against me by night. They meant to kill me. And they violated my concubine, and she died. And she's dead. So I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout all the country of the inheritance of Israel, for they have committed abominations and outrage in Israel. Behold, you people of Israel, all of you, give your advice and counsel here. And all the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, and none of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. Now by lot meant that they would not all go at once, but they would cast lots, throw dice. However that came up, then that's who would go at that particular time. And we will take 10 men of 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000, to bring provisions for the people, that they might, that when they come, they may repay Gibeah of Benjamin for all the outrage that they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the city, united as one man. And the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what evil is this that has taken place among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and purge evil from Israel. But the Benjamites would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the people of Israel. Then the people of Benjamin came together out of the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the people of Israel. And the people of Benjamin mustered out of their cities on that day 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who mustered 700 chosen men. Among all these were 700 chosen men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. And the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All these were men of war. The people of Israel rose and went up to Bethel and inquired of God, who shall go up first for us to fight against the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Then the people of Israel rose in the morning and encamped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to fight against Benjamin, and the men of Israel drew up the battle line against them at Gibeah. The people of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and destroyed on that day 22,000 men of the Israelites. And the people, the men of Israel, took courage and again formed the battle line in the same place where they had formed it on the first day. And the people of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until the evening, and they inquired of the Lord, shall we again go up? Shall we again draw near to fight against our brothers, the people of Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against them. So the people of Israel came near against the people of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went against them out of Gibeah the second day and destroyed 18,000 men of the people of Israel. All these were men who drew the sword. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. The people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, ministered before it in those days, saying, shall we go up, or shall we go out once more to the battle against our brothers, the people of Benjamin, or shall we cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. So Israel set men in ambush around Gibeah. And the people of Israel went up against the people of Benjamin on the third day and set themselves in array against Gibeah, as at other times. And the people of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. And as at other times they began to strike and kill some of the people in the highways, one of which goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and in the open country about 30 men of Israel. And the people of Benjamin said, they are routed before us as at the first. But the people of Israel said, let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. In other words, they were just an action of distraction there. They were distracting, drawing them out away from the city. And all the men of Israel rose out of their place and set themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel who were in ambush rushed out of their place from Mareh Geba. And there came out against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men out of all Israel, and the battle was hard. But the Benjamites did not know that disaster was close upon them. And the Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the people of Israel destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin that day. And all these were men who drew the sword. So the people of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel gave ground to Benjamin because they trusted the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. Then the men in ambush hurried and rushed against Gibeah. The men in ambush moved out and struck all the city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in the main ambush was that when they made a great cloud of smoke rise up out of the city, the men of Israel should turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 men of Israel. They said, surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the signal began to rise out of the city in a column of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the whole of the city went up in smoke to heaven. Then the men of Israel turned, and the men of Benjamin were dismayed, for they saw that disaster was close upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, and those who came out of the cities were destroying them in their midst. Surrounding the Benjamites, they pursued them and trod them down from Noah so far as opposite Gibeah on the east. 18,000 men of Benjamin fell, all of them men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness of the rock of Rimmon. 5,000 men of them were cut down in the highways, and they were pursued hard to get on, and 2,000 men of them were struck down. So all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, all of them men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and remained at the rock of Rimmon 4 months. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, the men, and beasts, and all that they found, and all the towns that they found they set on fire. This is a pretty famous story in the Old Testament. Started with a Levite and his concubine, his wife, who had come to the city of Gibeah, and they had tried to murder him. They violated his wife, and she died. They killed her. And the men of Benjamin would not release these men to the Israelites for punishment. They held them in safety. So the men of Israel went against them in battle. Thousands of men died. Now, in our way of thinking today, in our societies today, we'd give that little thought. That a woman was raped and murdered. We would give that very little thought. Well, we'd hope that whoever did it got caught, but a nation go to war over it? Go to war? $50,000 men died for this one woman and this Levite. It's quite a story. It would be of little consequence today, and we wouldn't regard it for long. As soon as it disappeared out of the news, media, and the papers, it would be forgotten. But not in those days. Because there were principles that were involved that are of extreme consequence if they are ignored. First of all, God didn't approve of it. God would have brought some kind of judgment on Israel had they not done something about this. The Lord looked very, very badly on things like that. So they knew this. And so they go up, even against their brothers, one of their own tribes, one of their own house. They said, this isn't going to stand. This isn't going to be the way it is. I wonder how many of us today would feel so inclined if we were in a situation like that. Would we be willing to go to battle, to give up our life to make it right? That's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. But there are certain principles that if we do not understand them and apply them in our lives and live by them, then all society breaks down. And we have much of what we have today. Murder, mayhem, violence, violence against women. I mean, go read the statistics on stuff like that. We don't hear about it every day. We don't hear about it. It's not in the news because it happens so often that we don't hear about it. It isn't news. There's a political commercial ad being run. I think it's a woman that's running against another fella, another man, and talking about how many rape kits have not been looked at. Like, what, 2,500? Haven't even been looked at. And that's just in one state. That's just Missouri. What do you think it is across the nation? It's expensive. It costs a lot of money. Labs, and the labs are so backed up they can't get to it. And so men walk free because we're not even willing to take the time or spend the money to process it, or we don't have it, one or the other. But that's how often it happens, and that's how much of it's going on out there that we never even hear about. Much of it isn't reported because women don't even report it, don't even talk about it. Violence in the land of all kinds. And then we wonder why our society is the way it is. We sit around and scratch our heads and say, what's going on out there? I'll tell you what's going on. No principle living. Godless society. Oh, I know the churches today got people in them. Some of them are full, some of them are sitting there like us. Not full. A lot of them are sitting like this, not full. Oh, they've got small congregations, but they're not full. You got the mega church that everybody looks at and says, oh, wow, look at that. But you know how many others aren't mega churches? And if you took all the people in those mega churches and spread them out across the country and put them in all the rest of the churches, it probably wouldn't fill all of them up. We think of the mega church, boy, look at that. Must be, oh man, wow. Well, don't get too excited because it's not making a dent. It's not making a dent. First time I read this many years ago, it boggled my mind. I thought, here's one Levite, one wife. They murder her, tried to murder him. He goes before the men of Israel, and they get so upset that 4 100,000 men say with one voice, we'll go up. And they inquired of the Lord, and the Lord said, do it. I wonder how many of us today would be willing to do that even if the Lord told us. Wait a minute. Wasn't my wife. I don't know that Levite. I don't know him from Adam's fox. I don't know who he is. And you're asking me to go up? I may get killed out there. And yet, with one voice they said, this cannot happen without justice. The one thing that God dislikes more than anything else that you read throughout all the Bible is injustice. The Lord will not abide in justice. He doesn't abide it. He don't like it. He himself is just. And he doesn't like injustice. He doesn't like violence. And yet, today, we would think this a small thing. Oh, there'd be some detectives out looking and they'd do what they could. But a whole city rise up? A whole nation rise up? We've got people that have been detained in foreign countries illegally, captured. They're in prisons. And our State Department might try to do something about it. And once in a while we get something done. But as a nation, do we really think about that every day? Do we get so riled up we go to Washington and say, look, if they don't turn them loose, we're all going to go over there and we're going to get them. And yet that's exactly what they did.
Yes, it is.
It's exactly what they did. Now, when you're going up against an army like the Benjamites had, which they were very skilled in war, when you have 700 men that are all left-handed, and they can use a sling so accurately they can hit a hair with it. Friend, they were dangerous to go up against. They were dangerous. That was almost like guns in those days. You didn't have to get close to a man to kill him or put him down. Swords weren't much good against that. They also had archers and things like that. It wasn't a pretty thing. It wasn't a foregone conclusion when you went out to battle against anyone that you were going to win. And yet, because of one man and one woman, they stood up against the Benjamites, their own people, and said, we will not let this pass until the guilty are punished and purged out of Israel. Now I realize the laws in those days were much different, and it wasn't as we have it today. We talk about today we're a more civilized society. Are we? Are we? Oh, but this is 2018. You know, everybody said that. This is 1930. This is 15:6. We always think we're progressing. We're getting better. Well, I wouldn't stand by and let something like that happen, wouldn't you? You know, in years gone by, in some of our major cities like New York, Chicago, and places like that, Los Angeles, how many times have you heard somebody, especially in New York, it was in the news a lot, one time about New York, that people were attacked openly, and people would just walk around.
Yeah.
Run away, leave.
Yep.
Wouldn't try to help the people or nothing. Just let them alone. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to be involved. Because we have no principles. None at all. We have no principles. Well, I could get hurt. Yeah, I know. But the person was being hurt too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't 4 or 5 people that saw it happen go over and take care of the situation? Stop it. But they wouldn't. Oh, I don't want to get involved. I haven't got time for that. Just let the person get killed. Let them get mugged. Let them get raped. Let them get whatever happens. Just let it happen. And I don't even want to. Don't come and ask me about it because I won't tell you. I'm not going to testify. You know, I used to think about this once in a while when I'd watch some kind of a mob movie, you know, Godfather or something like that. Or you watch some real stuff about mobsters that have come forward, like that one that was famous when he came forward and gave evidence against the mob, and they put him in a witness protection program for years and years and years. He come forward. Everybody called him a snitch and a squealer. Well, maybe he found the principle. Maybe he found a principle that he said, you know what? This is more important than my life, who I am. Now, it might have been for all the wrong reasons. Could have been. Who knows? But at least it was the right thing. And we don't even know that. Because, well, you know, he just did it because they paid him. He just did it because this. He just did it because he's mad at them. He just did it. I don't care why he did it. It was still right.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
It was still right.
Yes.
It was the right thing. And that's what we have a hard time with today in societies around the world, is doing what's right.
That's true.
The only way we're going to do it is if we're forced into it. Somebody puts a gun to our head and say, you're going to do this. Okay, yeah, right away. Yeah. But why don't we just do it because it's right? It's a right thing to do. On the news last night and this morning, came across the wire that 4 Jacksonville football players were detained in London coming out of a gentleman's club, as they called it. Tried to skip out on their bill. Just a little bill, 50,000 pounds. 65 grand in American money. And they tried to walk out without paying the bill. Now, wouldn't you think that somebody in that place was watching them? You're going to run up a 50,000 pound tab and ain't nobody looking at you? When they brought that bill to the table for him, they were watching that. They tried to walk out and they were detained. I don't know who detained them, but somebody detained them and didn't care who they were. You say, well, what's that got to do with what you're talking about? Well, what do you mean, what's it got to do with it? Why don't we do what's right? Because, well, I'm a football player, I'm a basketball player, I'm a football player, I'm what? I'm a baseball. I don't care who you are. Does that give you a license to cheat, to steal, to rob, to destroy? Politicians are the worst. Just because they're elected to some office, does that give them a right to cheat, lie, steal, get rich on the backs of the American people or whatever country they're in? I remember years ago, the president of Mexico, his last name was Echeverria. And when you can only serve one term as a president in Mexico, and it's 6 years. Once you serve that term, you can't run again or anything else. Somebody else takes over. So when he left office, by the way, he and his family own Cancun, and that area of Mexico, they own it. It's theirs. Or they did. Well, they still do today, I don't know, but they did. There's a well-known building in Mexico City. It's round. Sucker looks like the Tower of Pisa, only it's not leaning. But it just round, goes up, and there's a penthouse on the top of it. Shrubs and vines and stuff growing over the edges. You can look up and see it. That belongs to the Echeverria family, and it was given to his son as his place of residence. He stayed in Mexico after his term. The next president was Luis Portillo. Portillo, when his term was over, he moved to Spain because they didn't want him in Mexico anymore because they said he was too big a thief. He stole too much. So he wasn't safe living in Mexico anymore. So he moved to Spain. Echeverria, he didn't steal quite so much, so he could stay. Portillo stole a lot, so he had to leave. But we're all for the country. We want to run this country and make it great and do all, yeah, right. What are we here today? How do you make $173,000 a year and live in a $4 million home? Maybe you could do it, but I don't know how much groceries you'd be able to buy or how much gas you'd be able to buy or anything else. $4 million is a pretty good house payment. Or did you just pay for it? How do you do that? You know, when our government was first formed, men served at the pleasure of the government. They were wealthy men. You had to be in a way because otherwise you couldn't do it because they didn't pay you. The president was not paid. Senators were not paid. Nobody was paid. It wasn't why the government was set up. The government was in session for 3 months and they all went home. And they lived the rest of the year at home. On their farms, their plantations, or whatever they had. Some of them were lawyers, like John Adams. And today, they're griping about their salary. We don't make them enough. I heard one the other day say, we just can't live on $173,000 a year. Boy, there's a whole lot of people doing it. Mr. Politician or Mrs. Politician, whoever you may be, there's a whole bunch of us doing it. Principle living. We care about what we have here. Do we care about the country? We really care? No. You say, well, how can you say that, Brother Bob? Because I can see. I'm not stupid. I might have been born at night, but not last night. I'll tell you what, let the IRS catch you spending big amounts of money buying a home they don't think you can afford because they know what you do. They look at your tax returns and they know how much money you make. And see if they don't come and watch you. Well, where are you getting all this money? What happened? What's a windfall here? We didn't get no taxes from it. How'd you get that? Oh, they'll watch you. They got eyes on you. They're watching you. They don't care what you say. You can tell them all you want. And they're going to look at you and say, yeah, but we saw the bank account. So they do that. But as American people, we just sit around, we don't look at nothing. Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. You can't see. You can't look. Where are the principles? This was a major war fought with over 50,000 casualties on both sides over one incident. We would call that dumb. That's about the stupidest thing I ever heard of. That's what people would say today. That's what they do say about the Bible. It's just, that book is, it's just, the people, the stuff they did in there. Where have all the principles gone? Where's principle living today? How do we live our own lives in respect to principles? Do we cheat in business? Do we lie and steal? Do we present a false front? Are we abusive of people? How do we live? How do we live? See, there's a great pressure today. From the time you're in grade school till the time you graduate, and then after that it goes on and on. And that pressure is to just go along with the crowd. Man, just cool it. Just be cool, man. Just be a homie. I know some of you wouldn't understand that, but where I come from and lived for a long time, I understood it. Just be a homeboy. Man, what do you want to just cause problems all the time for? We want to fit in, even if it's wrong. It's portrayed in our culture. It's portrayed in our films and in movies, in television series. It's portrayed all the time. I remember watching a certain British program that my wife and I like, and we have watched before. And in one of the episodes of it, there are 4 young children who kill a young boy. They drown him in a river. It's covered up for years and years and years, but what they don't know and what they didn't understand was that the boy didn't die. They took his body and threw him in a well and threw his bike in after him. They were all riding bikes. But he survived, and he climbed out of that well. He woke up and he climbed out of the well, and another family took him and hid him in the basement for all of his life because they didn't want to let people know he was there. And he was the only son they had, and the mother was kind of crazy about that, and so on and so forth. Anyway, here's this boy. These kids had kept the pack all their lives and then this kid got out and he started killing them. Go along. Just go. Don't fess up. Don't go out and tell anybody. Don't say what you've done. Don't anybody say anything. In fact, that one boy had a knife and they cut their wrists like that or their hands, and they made a blood pact that they would never talk about it. And that's what we do. Hang principles. Let's hide everything we do. Let's hide everything we've ever done. Now, we've all probably done things in our lives that we don't like, that we're not proud of. And maybe some of them we haven't even told other people. And that's okay, as long as you've repented. Have you repented? You don't have to go blab your whole life to everybody. I understand that. But something like that should have been said, where somebody's life was involved. That wasn't just some act that you did alone. I mean, somebody almost died. Somebody could have died. And yet, we're going to cover this up. But no repentance. Have we repented? Have we actually said, God, I won't ever do that again, Lord? And then if it was with a person or there was somebody involved in it, did you go to them and make it right? Say, I'm sorry about that. I didn't. Now, sometimes that's not possible. I understand. And God forgives. I understand God forgives. But what I'm talking about is living by a principle. Something that goes beyond what we're capable of at times. But we should be capable of doing it. And then we can only be capable of doing it if we understand that it's what God would want. People break the law just to be part of the crowd. They hurt people just to be part of a group or part of somebody. We've got all kinds of hate groups across the United States that people are part of just because it gives them something to do. It gives them... You think I'm kidding? All of them aren't that. All of them aren't the same. There's 3 or 4 of them that are just meaner than skunks probably, but there's a lot of them that just go along because they can be part of something and they enjoy it and they have fun at it, and so on and so forth. Where are the principles of life? Where are honesty, integrity, caring, loving? Where are those things? Truth. Where are those things in society today? It's hard for most people just to even tell the truth about most things. We hide from each other. That's why when people get married, they don't really even know each other. Because we hide until the time we get married. Then we let all the hair down and we don't care because now we're married and it's okay now and I can let somebody know who I really am. And then maybe sometimes that's too late. Living by principles. Sir Walter Scott said something in a poem that speaks to this, and I think it's great. He wrote this: "Breathes there a man with soul so dead, who never to himself hath said, This is my own, my native land, whose heart hath ne'er within him burned, as home his footsteps he hath turned, from wandering on a foreign strand. If such there breathe, go mark him well. For him no minstrel raptures swell. High though his titles, proud his name, boundless his wealth, as wish can claim. Despite those titles, power and pelf, the wretch concentred all in self. Living shall forfeit fair renown, and doubly dying shall go down to the vile dust from whence he sprung, unwept, unhonored, and unsung." Sir Walter Scott. How can a poet see it and the rest of us not know? All around us are opportunities to let light shine in the darkness. Because, friend, it's dark out there. Oh, I know the sun's shining bright today, the clouds are gone, the sky's blue. Gentle breeze, beautiful day, temperature good. But it's dark. Because men's minds are dark. There's people right now plotting on how to kill, how to destroy, how to commit mayhem on other people as we sit here. See, we don't hear about it. It isn't always in the news. Regardless of what you might think. Well, of course, right now they're spending more time trying to kill the president than report anything else going on anyhow. But nevertheless, what we call a news agency in this country. You know how many attempts are thwarted every day in this country? Not let alone around the world. Our intelligence agencies, our Secret Service, our CIA, all these agencies on a daily basis are watching things that are going on. And much of it is stopped before it ever happens. And we don't hear about it because they stop it. Because we don't want to report that. I mean, after all, that wasn't news. 50 people didn't get killed. But much of it is stopped. Right now, hatred rules. Self-interest rules. All these things rule in the hearts of men. Men hating each other. It don't have to be some terrorist plot somewhere. It's just some plot that I don't like that guy and I'm going to get him. Every day almost in the papers you read somebody missing. Body found somewhere in a lake You know, people all over the place. And we think all these, all these things get solved. No, they don't. I don't know what the percentages are, but a great percentage of murders are never solved. Do you realize that? If they were, we'd have to build a prison big as the city of St. Louis to hold them. I forget the number, but the number of murders that happen every year in the United States is just staggering, let alone around the world. And we think we have a civilized society. Civilized? Oh, I know it's 2018, but it's just later, that's all. It's not more civilized. More people on the earth today, more people to do it. And then we sit around and men, they mock the Bible. They mock the book. They mock God. They've took him out of every place they can take him. You can't have the 10 Commandments up in a school or anywhere in the country in a government building. You can't do it. Because thou shalt not kill is a terrible thing to teach a child. Isn't that a terrible thing to teach a child? That principle. Thou shalt not steal. Isn't that a terrible thing to teach a child? Isn't that horrible? Dear God, why would we teach a child that? How would we even let a child read that on a wall of a school? Isn't that a terrible thing? So terrible. The other day, in the news, they caught 2 little girls. 11 and 12, weren't they? 11 and 12 years old. Had a whole mess of knives on them. Huddled up in a bathroom in their school, and they were going to kill 15 kids. They had decided they would kill 15 fellow students. 11 and 12-year-old girls. When they caught them, they were hiding in the bathroom, and they were planning that when the kids came in the bathroom, they would kill them. One of them had a butcher knife on her. I don't know how many knives they took off these girls when they caught them. And fortunately, they did before anyone was hurt. 11 and 12. And we say we're civilized. We say we've got a Christian society, a Christian nation. Are you kidding me? And yet the house of Israel was willing to go out to battle and give their own lives, if necessary, to make it right, to make a wrong right. Herbert Hoover, former president of the United States, said something that I thought was apropos. He wasn't much of an economic president. It's when we had depression and things like that. But the man at least had some morals and principles. And he said this. This is part of a quote. The new order, new freedom, new day, new deal, new religion, new liberalism, new war, new policy. We have overworked this word new in trying to get out of misery from our 37 years of hot and cold wars with intervals of hot and cold peace. The practical thing, if we want to make the world over, is to try out the word old for a while. Some old things are slipping. If they slip too far, the light will go out in America. Old virtues, religious faith, whole truth, integrity, honor in public office, economy and government, individual liberty, willingness to sacrifice. We have a cancerous growth of intellectual dishonesty in public life, mostly beyond law. Our great danger is suicide by complacence with evil. Herbert Hoover. Quite a statement. Quite a statement. Our great danger is suicide by complacence with evil. By complacence with dysfunction. By allowing it to go on unchecked. Intellectual dishonesty. Mostly beyond law. What do we see today? We have two people in government right now. Not in government, but were in government. That are guilty of all kinds of crimes. And walk free. And will never be tried. Will never be brought to justice. Will never be brought to court. Because they're part of the good old boys. They're part of the system, and the system will not prosecute itself. I'm not trying to be political today, I'm just talking about the truth. I don't care who you vote for, I don't care who you run. I don't care who runs. I know what I'm going to do, but I'm not up here trying to tell you what to do or what not to do. I'm just talking about the principles of the thing. If you and I had committed those kinds of crimes, we'd be in prison right now. And never would get out. But they do it with impunity. And then go on and stand up before crowds of people and talk about what great people they are. You can get away with sexual misconduct. You can get away with all kinds of things if you're in the right place. Because they're intellectually dishonest. And there are no principles they live by. None. And yet the American people elect these people. We elect them. I didn't, but they were elected. One of them was, at least. The other one served in government under the last president. So, but they'll never be prosecuted. I wonder what would happen to those people if they were in Israel at that time. Wouldn't have been good. Wouldn't have been good. Because they still live by principles. Willing to give their own lives, willing to stand up against great odds. When I read that the first time, I thought, okay, there's 400,000 men of Israel against 26,000 Benjamites and 700 Gibeonites. 26,700 men against 400,000. Why didn't the whole 400,000 go against the 26,000 at once? Question, huh? You would have thought that 400,000, the odds were so overwhelming that there would have been no losses on the side of the Israelites. Not very much, at least. But a lot less. And then one battle would have cleaned out the Benjamites. Would have done it. I mean, just the odds. I don't know how many to one that was, but I haven't got a calculator right here and I can't do it in my head. But it was pretty good, big odds. 26,000 against 400,000, that's not good odds. Why didn't they go out all at once? I'll tell you what I think. I came to this conclusion. I don't know if I'm right. I wasn't there. But I think it was because of honor. They weren't going to put 400,000 men against that small army. It wouldn't have been right. So let's match them man for man and see what we can do. And they cast lots. And they said, Lord, who should go up first? They said, Judah will go up first. They weren't willing to just overwhelm the Benjamites. In other words, we'll give them a fair shot. That just boggled my mind. But that's the only thing I can come up with. That's the only reason I can even imagine that they would do. Why? If you got that much of an overwhelming force against somebody, wouldn't you? Any army in the world would do it. They would use it. Listen, when Saladin came against Jerusalem, he had 200,000 troops marching against that city. 200,000. And he brought them all. And they all attacked. It almost boggles your mind to think how these men thought about these kind of things. This is a day when they were right before the Lord. A lot of them, they were doing it right. They went up and asked the Lord. They besought the Lord. They were keeping the principles that God set down. This is in the day of the judges. And much of Israel was all right before the Lord in those days. They were doing what they were supposed to do. And when one of them stepped out of line, this is what they were willing to do to straighten it out. What are we willing to do today to straighten it out? To get it done? What are we willing to do? You say, well, yeah, Brother Bob, look at the world. We're just a small congregation. How many? Well, it's like the man said, and you know, it's an old thing, and I know people wear it out, but it's still true. The longest journey you can take starts with one step. One step. When men left this area, Kansas City was a jumping off point to the west. Imagine 1850 and you're in Kansas City and you're part of a wagon train going west. And a lot of them walked. They walked the whole way so that the animals didn't have to carry more of a burden than they had to carry already to pull those wagons. So people walked.
Or they didn't even own a horse.
Yeah, some of them didn't own a horse. So you took one step on a 1,500-mile journey, one step at a time. But they got there. They got there. When we sit around and feel impotent and we feel that we can't do something, that's why we don't, because we stop right there. Trying to feed the hungry, trying to feed the poor. It's an overwhelming task. But there are people that do it, and they don't get it all done, but they get some of it done. And it's better than it was. It's better than it was. The only thing we can do is do what we can. But if we don't do anything, then it's on us. We need to do what we can to live by principles and be right in the sight of the Lord. Otherwise, as Hoover said, the light will go out in America. And brother, it's pretty dark out there right now. It's pretty dark. I think we need to stand up in all areas. Now, like I said, I'm not being political today. It's not my object here to be political. But to think that we don't need to be involved in it is wrong. That's wrong. I understand that our government is not the answer. I understand these men aren't the answer to mankind. I know that. I understand that. But you know what? There wasn't a king in Israel that didn't have a prophet standing there.
That's right. That's true.
And if you think that we don't need to speak to these people, you're very wrong. Not to straighten out their political life, to straighten their life out. And that would straighten out things. Not in hatred, not with vitriol, but with love. You know, you need to get it right. You need to straighten yourself up. We need to be involved in every aspect of our lives. Political, societal, family, every aspect. How are we ever going to change it if we don't? How are we ever going to reach people for Jesus if we don't? How are we going to reach men if we don't? How? We can't sit back and just act like we're a bunch of knots on a log somewhere. We have to be involved. We have to be educated. We have to learn. Paul said before he did anything, he went aside into a desert place for 3 years. What was he doing there? Learning. Paul didn't talk off the top of his head. He didn't see that sign in the road and then just get up and go start blabbing stuff. He didn't know what he was talking about in the first place. At that moment, he wouldn't have known what to say. So he went and learned. And then he went and met with the apostles. And he sat at their feet. So that he could go out and say something intelligent. You say, none of the apostles were ever involved in politics. Is that right? Well, I don't know about that. I think the Areopagus was a totally political place. The Areopagus was the political philosophizing area of Greece. It's where they went with all their philosophy and their political things and made their judgments. The Areopagus, the highest court in the land. And that's where he went. And he addressed those men. He wasn't trying to solve the political situation in Greece, but he was trying to solve the hearts of those men, that they might do what was right before the Lord. And that'll bless a nation. That'll bless a nation. I understand that I'm not of this kingdom and I'm not of this world. I understand that. But I live in it, and the Lord told me to occupy it until he came. How do I occupy? Just sit around like a lump? Well, I'm occupying. Is that what you do with your life? You just occupy it? Or do you get up off your chair and do something? Most of us have to work, have to do things, have to keep our house, have to keep our lawn, have to keep this, have to do that, have to, get a paycheck. Why don't you just quit doing that too? Just quit. Just don't be involved in nothing. Go sit out in the middle of the desert somewhere and just sit there. Wait for the Lord to come. No, that isn't what God called us to do. God called us to be an integral part of the society we live in. And to mold that society or convince that society of Him. Say, well, I don't even know a politician. I understand that. I don't either. But you know what? I know somebody, and I can be an influence there. I know somebody I can talk to about the Lord. I know somebody I can share Jesus with.
Yes.
And maybe they know somebody, and then they know somebody. I don't, see, we can't, but we just can't sit around and not be involved. Can't do it. We have to live by principle. We have to understand the principles, and we have to live by them. If these men could do what they did, surely we can do it on a smaller level or on a smaller scale. And we haven't yet resisted unto blood. In other words, we haven't yet put our lives on the line, knowing that if I say I'm a Christian, they're going to kill me. Brother Harris the other day put a thing in his email about in Egypt. He had, 300 conversions?
130.
130. I knew there was 30 in there somewhere. There's 130 conversions in revivals in the churches that they had visited a while back with Pam Howard and some of the folks that went. They're having revival. Dangerous. It's dangerous in Egypt. I don't know if you've read anything about Egypt, but friend, that's not the most friendly place to Christians. It's dangerous. These are poor people. That's where revival always starts.
Yes.
Among the poor. Jesus said the poor have the gospel preached unto them. 130 converts. Revival. These are Muslims converting to Christianity. You understand the gravity of that? That's like the Jews in Jesus' day converting. Man. Outstanding, outstanding. Keep me in your prayers. And I want to say this, that he also mentioned that they want to give 200 blankets. It's getting cold in Egypt. This is wintertime. It gets cold. I don't know, people don't think the desert being cold, but I've lived in the desert and it gets cold in the wintertime. More people freeze to death in Arizona in the wintertime in the desert than die of heat exhaustion in the summertime. That's true. I read that stat one time. You know why? Because they don't think the desert gets cold, and so when they go out in the desert, it'll be 75 degrees that day. They go out there, night comes, they get caught somehow, and if they don't have coats or blankets or stuff, they freeze to death because it can drop below freezing like that. People always take water when they go out in the summertime. They take stuff so they're not without water and stuff. But in winter, they don't do it. They don't think it's going to get cold. It's getting cold in Egypt. And they want to give 200 blankets to these new converts and people in these churches that don't have any way to buy a blanket to keep warm. They don't have any way to do it. He said it would be $3,600 for the 200 blankets. That's probably including the cost, getting them there, everything. And I wanted to present it today. If you want to share in that cost, give an offering, be fine. We'll all put it all together. We'll write a check and send it. Okay? So whatever if you want to do something, my wife and I will do something. And we're going to do something. And, if the Lord puts it on your heart, you listening to me by television today, God puts it on your heart. You got PayPal, go to our website, RF Ministries, go to the website and go to PayPal. You can contribute there, you can donate, and tell us what it's for. Tell us it's for the blankets for Egypt, and we'll make sure that it goes to that cause, okay? We'll just write one check and we'll send it to help defray the cost. That's one way we can stand up and do what's right and help. You say, well, it's just a blanket. I know, but you know how much it'll mean to somebody?
Absolutely.
We not only, they've already shared the gospel. They've already accepted Christ. Now let's take care of the other needs.
Yeah.
Do that, but don't leave the other undone.
Amen.
Jesus said you should have done that, but don't leave the rest of it undone. Don't leave the rest of it undone. If you see your brother hungry and cold, and you say, well, be warm and be full, but you don't do anything about it, how dwelleth the love of God in you? Or in me? If we don't do anything about it. If you can't do anything, I understand. This isn't something that I'm putting on you that you have to do. It's something I'm sharing with you. If you want to do something to help us out, appreciate it. And I know Brother Harrison appreciated it. And God will bless you for it. God blesses that kind of giving. God blesses that kind of giving. Amen. God will bless. He'll do something and touch our lives in special ways. Amen? Okay. Praise the Lord. Okay, that's what I have for you this morning. I trust that's a blessing. I trust it helps you. What I try to do is share things that are pertinent to our everyday lives and everyday living. It's okay. Don't feel bad if you're involved. Don't feel bad if you feel about these things, because we should be involved in every aspect of our society as Christians for the right reasons. Not to be political, just to be political. Not to be, out among the crowd just to be there. No, but we need to carry this message from the top down and from the bottom up. It needs to be everywhere. These people need Jesus just as bad as anybody else. In fact, some of them more. Because they have power. and it's in their hands. Amen? Anything? All right. Praise the Lord. God bless you. Thank you for watching. We do appreciate it. The Lord bless you. Trust you'll have a blessed day wherever you are this morning. Amen. God bless you until we see you again on the next broadcast. Join us Wednesday, next Sunday morning. God bless you. Have a great day in the Lord. Amen.
Of homicides are not, there are no arrest made in the United States.
I knew it was high.
It's approximately 50%.
Several of the doctors said approximately 50% of the homicides in the United States are not.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road. Words of fire. He said, you are a lonely soul with a heart of stone that rakes against your thirsty bones. Such a lonely soul. Said I can show you what can save you, but we need to go where no chariot can take you, where the river meets the sand. There is water there that can quench your thirsty bones and make you well, make you well. So I followed the ghost of a king with every step. I tried to see beyond for a trace of the riverside, but restlessness was my prize. And then we came upon a golden shore, but the voice of fire wasn't coming from a ghost no more. My heart of stone came alive when my eyes were opened up, and I saw that I had come where no chariot can take you, where the river meets the sand. There is water there that can quench your thirsty bones and make you well, make you well. So I knelt beside the river and I drank until, I drank until, I drank until I died. But something in the water must have brought me back. It brought me back, it brought me back to life. Where no chariot can take